In the darkest mud, a seed was buried, forgotten, mocked, abandoned. But the mud did not break her. It became her shelter. While the world turned its back, she quietly reached for the light. And when no one believed, she bloomed. This is not just a story. This is the miracle of living like a lotus, pushpam. In a forgotten corner of the world, there lay an old pond, cloaked in murky waters, and layers upon layers of thick black mud. The air around it was heavy, filled with the scent of decay and stagnant water. No one dared to step too close, for the surface was covered with rotting leaves, broken branches, and tangled weeds that thrived in filth. Passers-by would often wrinkle their noses in disgust, muttering to themselves, "Nothing good can come from a place like this. It is doomed to remain a cesspool forever." And yet, hidden deep beneath the suffocating sludge, buried far below where the eye could see, lay a small, seemingly insignificant seed. It had been there for what felt like an eternity, swallowed by darkness, forgotten by the world above. Unlike the surface dwellers who cursed the pond and turned away in revulsion, the seed did not despair. It did not curse its fate nor question why it had been cast into such an unkind place. Instead, it remained still, listening. It listened to the faint whispers of the sun's warmth above. It felt the subtle currents of water that occasionally stirred around it. And somewhere deep within, the seed nurtured a quiet, unshakable belief. There must be more than this darkness. There must be a light beyond this prison of mud. At first, there was only a stirring, almost imperceptible, a soft awakening, like the first breath of life. Gently, cautiously, the seed began to push a slender root into the mud, seeking stability. At the same time, a delicate shoot began to press upward, driven not by sight, for it had never seen the sun, but by instinct, by faith in something greater. Each inch was a battle. The mud was thick, heavy, and clung to the tender sprout, trying to pull it back down. At times, it felt as though the mud would smother it completely, snuff out its fragile hope before it could even begin to grow. But the sprout persisted. It did not allow itself to be defined by the dirt that surrounded it. It did not think, "I am of the mud, therefore I am filthy." Instead, it thought, "I am reaching for the light, and that is what defines me." Days blurred into nights, and nights into days. The sprout learned to move slowly but steadily. It twisted around obstacles, pushed through tangles of decay, and endured the weight of the world pressing down upon it. Other seeds buried nearby had given up. Some had rotted away, letting the mud claim them. Some had never even tried. But this sprout, this little being of will and faith, continued its slow ascent, because it understood something simple yet profound. Where you begin does not dictate where you can go. The mud was not its identity. The darkness was not its destiny. They were merely the conditions through which it must pass, the tests that would forge its strength. Sometimes the sprout would pause and rest, feeling the crushing pressure of its environment weigh upon it. In those moments, doubt whispered in its tiny mind, "Is there truly anything waiting for me above? Am I foolish to hope for something I cannot see?" But then it would remember the subtle warmth that had first stirred its heart. It would recall the faint golden whispers that hinted at life beyond this Maya, and with renewed determination, it would reach upward again. In the human world, many of us find ourselves trapped in similar ponds. Our circumstances may feel suffocating. The mud of regret, loss, or hardship clings to our spirits. We are told by others, and often by our own inner voices, that nothing good can grow from where we are, that we are doomed to be stained by the environment we inhabit. But the Lotus teaches otherwise. It shows us that within the darkest, filthiest places, the most beautiful things can be born. If we have the courage to reach for the unseen light. The sprout continued its silent journey through the heavy mud, never shouting, never demanding attention, only steadily pushing upward toward a world it had never seen. Each movement was a battle against forces it could barely comprehend. The mud was dense and unyielding, filled with sharp twigs, broken stones, and thick roots from long dead plants. Sometimes it would get trapped, curled around a rock or snared by an ancient rotting branch. The weight of the water above the heaviness of the mud around seemed determined to crush it, to smother its hope. And yet, it pressed on. The sprout understood without ever having been told that life is not given freely to those who simply wish for it. It is earned through struggle, persistence, and unwavering belief. There were moments of deep loneliness, buried beneath layers of filth. No other being encouraged it. No cheering voices spurred it onward. Only silence and darkness. But the sprout knew, true strength is born in solitude. When there is no one to applaud you, no one to witness your efforts, that is when your spirit is truly tested. At times, the mud would thicken after a heavy rain, and the sprout would find itself sinking back slightly, losing the small gains it had made. These were painful moments. It had fought so hard to climb a little closer to the unknown light, and now it was being dragged back into the darkness it so desperately sought to escape. The sprout would pause, exhausted, its slender body trembling. It was easy to imagine giving up, easy to let the mud reclaim it, to surrender and dissolve like so many seeds had before. But then, from somewhere deep within, a quiet voice would arise. You are not meant to remain buried. You are meant to rise. And so it rose. Millimeter by millimeter, day after day, the sprout learned to endure pain without bitterness, to persist without recognition, to hope without certainty. In the human world, we too encounter mud. We face obstacles that seem immovable. The loss of a loved one, the betrayal of a friend, the slow erosion of our dreams. Each hardship weighs us down, tempts us to believe that happiness is beyond our reach. But like the sprout, we must remember, progress is not always visible. Growth often happens in the darkness, far from the eyes of the world. Each silent battle we fight within ourselves, to remain kind when wronged, to continue dreaming when discouraged, to rise after falling, builds the invisible roots of our strength. The sprout also encountered moments of unexpected beauty. Tiny bubbles of oxygen would sometimes rise through the mud, tickling its slender stem. A faint glow of sunlight might, on rare occasions, filter weakly through the murky water, warming it just enough to give new energy. These moments were brief, fleeting, but they mattered. They were signs that the light was real, that its journey was not in vain. And then one extraordinary morning, something changed. The sprout felt a sudden lightness around it. The mud was no longer clinging so tightly. The resistance that had defined its entire existence began to ease. With one final push, the sprout broke free, piercing the surface of the water. For a moment it was overwhelmed. Above the surface, the world was vast and dazzling. The sky stretched out endlessly in every direction, brilliant and blue. The sun's rays poured down in golden sheets, warming the sprout's battered, mud-streaked body.
The sprout, now a young lotus stem, had reached a world it had only dared to believe in. It breathed the open air for the first time, and it was beautiful beyond anything it had imagined. The struggles in the mud, the endless darkness, the moments of despair, they all now made sense. They had not been punishments. They had been preparation. Without the mud, it would not have developed the strength to rise. Without the darkness, it would not have appreciated the light. Without the struggle, it would not have understood the true value of freedom. Now, freed from the suffocating mud, the young lotus faced a new chapter of its life. The battle to reach the surface had been long and grueling, but the journey was far from over. Basking in the sunlight, it felt the warmth seep into every fiber of its being. The air above the water was light, filled with the sweet fragrance of distant blossoms and the soft hum of life unseen. For the first time, the lotus could stretch freely without fear of being dragged back down. It grew stronger each day. Its slender stem thickened, becoming sturdy yet flexible, swaying gracefully with the gentle ripples of the pond. Tiny leaves unfurled, each one a testament to perseverance, each one drinking in the sunlight it had so long sought. But even here, among the open skies and golden light, challenges remained. Storms would roll in without warning, bringing fierce winds and torrential rains. Waves would crash against the young lotus, threatening to break its delicate body. At night, the cold would creep over the pond, chilling its tender leaves. There was no perfect safety, no final end to struggle. But the lotus had learned something essential from its time beneath the mud. Strength is not the absence of hardship, it is the mastery of it. So the lotus did not fear the storms. It bent when the winds howled, bowed low when the rain pounded down, and when the tempest passed, it rose again, resilient and unbroken.
And then, one glorious morning, the first bud appeared. At first it was small, almost hidden among the leaves. But day by day it grew, swelling with life and promise. The lotus felt a deep stirring within, a culmination of all its struggles, a silent song rising from its very roots. When the bud finally opened, the world seemed to pause. Layer after layer of petals unfurled, each one pure and luminous, untouched by the muddy waters below. A fragrance, delicate and serene, spread across the pond, carried by the morning breeze. The lotus stood tall, blooming in full glory, radiant against the backdrop of the murky pond. Travelers who passed by the once forgotten swamp now stopped in awe. They marveled at the lotus's beauty, at its untainted splendor rising from such a filthy place. "How is it possible?" they whispered. "How can something so pure be born from the mud?" The lotus, of course, offered no answer. It did not boast of its struggles, nor did it speak of its suffering. It simply stood, silently embodying the truth that it was not the mud that defined it, but the light it had chosen to seek. The mud was still there, swirling beneath the surface. The decay and darkness still surrounded the pond, but the lotus remained unstained, untouched. Its roots reached down into the muck, but its heart bloomed toward the sky, and so it lived, a silent reminder to all who saw it that the place you come from does not determine who you are, that the circumstances you are born into do not dictate the purity of your soul, that in a world full of darkness, decay, and despair, it is possible, through unwavering faith, patient perseverance, and inner light, to rise, to bloom, and to live unstained. In our own lives, we encounter mud every day. Betrayals, losses, failures, temptations.
They cling to us, try to define us, try to pull us back down. It is easy to believe that we are no better than the mud we struggle through. Easy to think that our pain will always taint us, that our past will forever mark us. But the Lotus teaches otherwise. It teaches that the soul can remain pure even when the world around it is impure, that we can choose to rise even when everything around us tries to pull us down, that no matter how deep the mud, no matter how long the darkness, the light is real and it is worth reaching for. The Lotus does not hate the mud. It does not resent the darkness. It simply uses them as the ground from which it rises. Without the mud, it could not bloom. Without the struggle, it could not become strong. And so should we live, not cursing our hardships, but using them to grow stronger, wiser, more compassionate, not fearing the dirt, but refusing to let it stain our spirit. To live like a lotus is to embrace life's imperfections without letting them define you, to bloom with grace, even when the world around you is in chaos, to stand in silent dignity, radiant and pure, no matter how muddy the waters beneath.
No matter how deep the mud, no matter how heavy the rain, inside you there is a lotus waiting to bloom. Nurture it with kindness, protect it with faith, and when the time comes, you too will rise beautiful and unstained. Whisper tone, live like a lotus, always.